Hey folks, back with another video. Let's dive into what stories got my attention today. Starting with the US Treasury on Wednesday has slapped sanctions on a notorious Chinese organized crime figure alleging that he expanded his criminal activities across Southeast Asia through a state-backed infrastructure project. Wan Kyo-koi, also known as quote-unquote Broken Tooth, is the head of the powerful 14K Triad, or organized crime group, which, quote, engages in drug trafficking, illegal gambling, racketeering, human trafficking, and a range of other criminal activities, end quote, the Treasury said. One had built his operations in Cambodia, Myanmar, and Palau since he was released from Macau prison 8 years ago, it said. The 65-year-old Chinese crime boss spent 14 years in jail over a string of murders and bombings in Macau before being released in 2012. The Treasury said that Wang, as a member of the Communist Party of China's Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, attached his criminal operations to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project that aims to build trade and transport links from East Asia to Europe. It also blacklisted three entities headed by one, the Cambodia-based World Hongmen History and Culture Association, the Palau-China Hongmon Cultural Association based in Palau, and the Hong Kong-based Dongmei Group, which is a key investor in Myanmar's Xizang zone. The Cambodia-based association has been involved in criminal activities such as developing and launching cryptocurrencies, dealing in real estate and casinos, and establishing a security company focused on the Belt and Road Initiative investments, it said. The US also blacklisted Harry Warney Gaboto Nambi Sherman, a Liberian senator and head of the Liberian Senate Judiciary Committee, and Raimbek Matraimov, a former deputy of the Kyrgyz Customs Service, for his alleged involvement in a money laundering scheme. The sanctions seek to freeze all assets of those individuals and companies that fall under US jurisdiction and ban Americans as well as US firms from dealing with them. Now, while I personally neither support nor oppose sanctions on any particular individuals as a way to punish them for wrongdoing, because I do believe that, no matter, there are arguments on both sides that they could be useless. However, I would like that the Western governments in general to work towards a limited goal of exposing the Beijing regime for doing horrible things to its people. Talking of which, the Hong Kong's democracy campaigner Agnes Chow was yesterday denied bail pending an appeal against her 10-month jail sentence on charges related to unauthorized assembly during anti-government protests last year. Chow, along with Wong and Nathan Law, founded the now disbanded democracy group Demosisto in 2016. The party was dissolved hours after Beijing passed a contentious national security law for the territory on June 30 amid fears it could be targeted under the legislation. Chow was also arrested in August on suspicion of, quote, colluding with foreign forces, end quote. But it is yet to face any charges. Considering that Hong Kong authorities are the puppets of the Beijing at this moment, did not drop the hammer on those activists, in my opinion, is a good sign that our actions of being vocally critical of the regime is working. And of course, this vocal criticism is coupled with the credible deterrence policy that we have been also pursuing parallel to being critical of them. But I am cautiously optimistic, as my next story will shows. The China's foreign ministry said Thursday that two Canadians held for 2 years in a case linked to a Huawei executive have been indicted and put on trial, but gave no details. Former diplomat Michael Kovrig and businessman Michael Spavor had been confined since December 10, 2018, just days after Canada detained Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou, who is also the daughter of the founder of the Chinese global communications equipment giant. China has said Kovrig and Spavor were indicted June 19 by the Beijing prosecutor's office on quote suspicion of spying for state secrets and intelligence end quote. Now neither China nor Canada has released specifics about their cases. At a daily briefing Thursday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said that the two had been quote arrested, indicted, and tried end quote in what appeared to be the first public mention that they had been brought to court. She reiterated that their cases and Meng's were quote unquote different in nature, with Meng's being a quote purely political incident end quote. Despite that, China has consistently linked the fate of the two Canadians to its demands that Meng be released immediately. Canadian Foreign Ministry Francois Philippe Champagne issued a statement Wednesday marking their 2 years of captivity, saying, quote, "These two Canadians are an absolute priority of our government, and we will continue to work tirelessly to secure their immediate release and to stand up for them as a government and as Canadians." End quote. The U.S. is seeking Meg's extradition from Canada on fraud charges. Her arrest severely damaged relations between Canada and China, which has also sentenced two other Canadians to death and suspended imports of canola from Canada. Meng, the chief financial officer of Huawei Technologies, is living in a luxury Vancouver home while her extradition case continues in a British Columbia court. The US accuses Huawei of using a Hong Kong shell company to deceive banks and do business with Iran in violations of US sanctions. It is not publicly known where Kovrig and Spavor are being held or under what conditions, although Canada's ambassador to China testified to a House Commons committee this week that they were quote unquote robust. Canada's foreign ministry did not immediately reply to an emailed request for comments on Hua's remarks. Now, like I said, I am cautiously optimistic that our strategy is working. However, during this strategy, there is going to be some give and take. But I think as long as we remain calm and do not let our, let's just say, hawks take over, but rather we keep the hawks also inside the loop of the whole policy against the Beijing regime. Moving on, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor announced Wednesday that she was shutting down a preliminary probe into alleged war crimes committed by British soldiers after the US-led invasion in Iraq. Fatou Bensouda's announcement comes after a quote-unquote rigorous 6-year-long investigation into the conduct of British military personnel, particularly into the treatment of Iraqi prisoners in detention. Quote, "Having exhausted reasonable lines of inquiry arising from the information available, I therefore determined that the only professionally appropriate decisions at this stage is to close the preliminary examination," end quote, Bensouda said in a statement. Now, as a result, the court will not proceed at a full ICC investigation. In June, an independent British investigator looking into the allegations that the UK soldiers committed war crimes in Iraq between 2003 and 2009 said all but one of the thousands of complaints had been dropped. Bensouda did criticize an initial British response to the allegations as inadequate, weakened, quote, by a lack of a genuine effort to carry out relevant investigations independently or impartially, end quote. She acknowledged that the British authorities had subsequently made efforts to properly probe abuses, but complained that not a single case has been prosecuted after a decade-long investigation, quote, depriving them of justice, end quote. Her office also identified numerous concerns with respect to how specific decisions on certain matters were arrived at during Britain's domestic probe. Now, in this case, the ICC would get involved only if it believed there was no genuine attempt to bring suspects to justice. Now, after a detailed inquiry, Bensouda said her office, quote, could not substantiate allegations that the UK investigative and prosecutorial bodies had engaged in shielding based on a careful scrutiny of the information before it. End quote. Human Rights Watch, however, lamented the decision, saying that the British government, quote, has repeatedly shown precious little interest. Sorry, yeah, let me repeat that. The British government, quote, has repeatedly shown precious little interest in investigating and prosecuting atrocities committed abroad by British troops, end quote. Now, in this whole story, I believe the story effectively basically confirms what I keep talking about, which is that our institutions in the West are definitely not perfect, but at the very least they are functional and they try their best to do what is right and just. And this story goes on to, amongst many other stories, proves that the Western countries definitely are trying to do the just thing. Moving on into Iran, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said on Wednesday that that the 2015 nuclear deal would be easy to restore, reiterating his desire to return to the accord known as the JCPOA. Rouhani said President Trump withdrew from the JCPOA by scribbling, quote, on a piece of paper, end quote, meaning it would be as easy to reverse. Quote, the next person can put up a nice piece of paper and sign it, and it just needs a signature. We'll be back where we were. It takes no time and needs no negotiations, end quote, Rouhani said during a televised speech. For months, Rouhani and other Iranian officials have said Iran can quickly come into compliance with the JCPOA if the US lifts sanctions. But there are a lot of forces at work looking to sabotage the deal, including Israel, the likely perpetrator of the assassination of the Iranian scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Despite the pressure, Joe Biden still says he will work with Iran to return to the JCPOA. In an interview last week, Biden said he would return to the deal and work on follow-on negotiations for a stricter agreement that covers Iran's ballistic missile program. Now, while I would like to see peace in the Middle East, which I mean is no secret, I do also understand that we must not abandon our allies in the process, and that is where let's just say, the problem comes out, that the allies always seem to find some kind of a problem. However, in the case of Iran, I think we can build a peaceful relations and also get them to slowly move, and we can slowly make them move in the direction of making a deal with Israel. I can also probably suggest that any future deal with Iran would have to have a timetable that includes a future deal with Israel. However, whatever the reasons, whatever the government decides, I think that we do have a window of opportunity to have a workable deal with Iran that is sustainable, if only our politicians tried. Well, that's it for this video. If you like the video, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button for future updates. Write in the comment sections your thoughts, criticisms, and anything I might have missed. As usual, the links to the stories are in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video.